Hello, friends. Angie here, coming at you solo today with a bit of a heart-to-heart or a call to action or maybe even a little bit of a rant for any woman who loves the outdoors. This episode is about something that I care deeply about, not just as someone who works in storytelling and hosts the See Her Outside podcast, but also as someone who is still learning how to share my own story. We see this a lot at the Cairn Project, at the Summit Scholarship Foundation. We have women and girls and gender diverse adventurers who have an incredible story in their heart, but they hold themselves back from sharing it, from turning up the volume on their own story. So if you've ever thought, who wants to hear from me anyway, or I'm not outdoorsy enough, or elite enough, or fast enough, or polished enough to share my own story, then this episode is for you. I need you to turn it up full volume, because we're going to talk about why your story matters, maybe even how you can start finding your own story, and how it's not just okay to share your story, but it's a radical and necessary act to help us close the gender gap outdoors and inside. I'm Angie, and this is See Her Outside, brought to you by the Cairn Project and the Summit Scholarship Foundation. We share stories of women, girls, and gender diverse adventurers to promote belonging and visibility in nature. We hope that this story inspires you to advocate for a more inclusive outdoors. All right, first, let's talk about what's at stake if we do not share our stories. If we don't let our voices be heard, our experiences in the outdoors, then the entire outdoor world is going to become an echo chamber, or honestly, it might remain an echo chamber. We'll get the same types of voices, the same definitions of what adventure is, the same assumptions about who belongs outside. And usually these voices in this echo chamber, they aren't women. They're not people of color. They're not LGBTQ folks or folks with disabilities or anyone who grows up thinking that nature isn't for people like me. We need to diversify the stories that are being shared in the media, in our living rooms, in conversations with friends. If we don't step up and speak our honest stories as individuals, then the loudest people are going to keep on narrating what the outdoors should look like. And that doesn't serve future adventurers, and it doesn't serve us. Here's a specific example of when I realized this. So I took my Erie 1 avalanche course, and it was an all-women's course. I got a scholarship to participate in it, and I'm so thankful for it because at that time in my life, I wouldn't have been able to otherwise, which is why I love the Summit Scholarship Foundation so much. Anyway, in this Erie 1 course, they talked about the need for women to write snow condition observations. You can go to your local avalanche center online. They probably have a forum where you can talk about what the snow conditions looked like. Did you notice any avalanches? Stuff like that. Here's the thing. Most reports on avalanche observation centers are written by demographically similar men. But if we can diversify snow observations, a really specific example, right? That means that we are collecting more data, more perspectives. That will help us better understand avalanche risk, like potentially save lives if we are getting more diverse observations of snow. So I'm seeing storytelling as the same way. The more perspectives we can have about the outdoors and what it means to adventure and how the wilderness changes us, the more awareness we're going to have about why we need to be getting all types of people in the outdoors in safe places, in places where they are feeling empowered to speak up and share their own stories. I noticed this in my 2022 adventure fundraiser with the Cairn Project. I climbed 5 Cascade volcanoes. And as a part of that storytelling for that adventure fundraiser, I decided that I would write a trip report on my blog. I just posted pictures about the day. I talked about the intentions for the climb, since most of them were with my group of female friends. We would really take a friendship approach to this, and how can we all support each other throughout the whole day. I really didn't think anybody was going to read these trip recaps, these personal reflections on my little website. But not only did people read them, I was getting people from across the country donating to my adventure fundraiser, strangers that I would never meet, because these stories that I was sharing on my blog were helping them with their Mount Adams climb, with their Mount Rainier climb coming up. Google was literally pushing them to my little blog And it helped them enough that when they got to the final line that said, hey, if this was helpful, donate to my adventure fundraiser, they did. My story, my trip recap helped somebody. So don't underestimate what your story can do. It's data, it's advocacy, and it's enough the way it is. It doesn't have to be the most elite. Write this down if you need to. Representation does not expand without new voices. When women don't tell their stories, the narrative gets skewed or stays skewed. And representation isn't going to magically diversify. It takes us all stepping up as individuals, which brings me to the second part of our conversation today. It's a little heart to heart. Let's talk about the mindset traps that are holding us back. The scary stuff, okay? Because we know that our voices matter, but it's still scary to share it, and I get that. I have experienced and still experience a lot of roadblocks to sharing my story. But lately, I have been fired up to shake other women and try and show them, like, yes, that all of these roadblocks to sharing our story are there. They're valid, but also let's counter them. So here's what I've heard from people like you lately, people from our Trailblazer community and from people in other parts of my work. A lot of women are worried that folks aren't going to take them seriously when they share their story, or that talking about themselves will be seen as narcissistic, or that by putting yourself out there, people with more experience are going to see you as silly. There's like that imposter syndrome theme, right? There's still that feeling of like, well, I didn't get a good enough picture or video for this hike, so it won't make a good enough Instagram reel, right? Like we're literally letting the algorithm take advantage of our stories here. I hear people talk about how they want the story to be about equity and other people and a greater mission, not about themselves. We're going to unpack that one. And I've heard a lot of people talk about how they want to find that line of being relatable but unique. So how do you share your story in a different way, not just what everybody else is saying? So if you're nodding along saying like, yes, I have experienced that, same, okay? These are not personal flaws. These are trained fears, right? We have been socialized to stay small, to stay humble, and not to make things, quote unquote, about us. But here's the thing. Visibility isn't vanity. This is how change starts. And you do not need to be elite in order to tell a story. You don't need to have the most epic adventure setting. I mean, great for you. If you are setting fastest known times or summiting Mount Everest, that's great. You have a story too. But if you're not, your story is just as valid. You don't need to be at the tippy top of the game. You just need to be honest. And your story is not a distraction from the cause. It is a bridge to it. So for all of us out there who are saying like, oh, but like the focus shouldn't be on me. The focus needs to be on a greater mission. Listen, you do that by sharing your own experience as an individual and how that bridges to the greater mission. Your story can support equity and center your lived experience. It's not either or. There was a story I shared on a podcast that I was on recently, and it was about when I was training for my 100-mile race in 2024. It was an ultra marathon. The training plan that I had been following, it would leave me little notes every day. So like, oh, today you run for 60 minutes. Here, think about the way that your legs feel or something. I was in my taper period, so about 2 weeks before my race, and the note for the day said, make sure you cut your calories by 20% during taper because you'll probably gain weight. And that comment, for the first time in that training block, made me doubt myself. My friend had the same experience. She was training for this race with me, running it with me. She and I had both struggled with some weird obsessive disordered food tendencies way in the past, and we thought that was long buried. That was long ago. But that little comment on my training plan made me spiral around food a little bit for the first time in a very long time. And I started to feel like maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the problem here. Maybe I'm too sensitive for this comment. But a month or so passed and it continued to bother me. And I did what I felt was really scary at the time. I sent an email to the training plan creators and I explained to them how I felt when I read that comment and how it made me doubt myself and how I had done so much work over the past decade to not let comments about food bother me. And I was so afraid that they were going to reply to my email and say that I was a sensitive, special snowflake or that nobody else feels this way, etc. But wow, to their credit, they responded to me in probably the best customer service experience I've had. They validated my feelings. They agreed that what they put in there was problematic, and they promised that they would remove it from all their future training plans. That moment of opening that email to me will forever stick in my mind because I realized that even sharing such a small story, like I'm an ordinary runner. I didn't actually have like a full-blown eating disorder at any point in my life. So I didn't think that my story mattered that much, but the fact that it created a ripple effect and it got a problematic note removed from future training plans, like, wow, even that little thing can create so much real change. And also, that little story there, it's not epic, right? This isn't an incredible adventure story, but it was a moment that changed me. So that brings me to the next piece of this heart-to-heart is how can you start mining for your story? What is a story inside of you, big or small, that the world needs to hear? And if you're not sure yet, but you're intrigued about storytelling, here's what I want you to keep in mind. Here's what I want everyone to keep in mind about storytelling. A story isn't just saying what happened. A story is sharing how something that happened changed you as a human. It doesn't need to be this like epic tale of survival, whatever. It just needs to be a transformational moment for you. So if you're starting to think like, okay, I have all of these memories of transformational times outside, start narrowing down a focus. You can ask yourself, what's a moment outdoors from your adventure that surprised you? Or what is an experience you had in nature that cost you something emotionally, physically, energetically? What is a detail from an adventure that you keep coming back to years and years later? Think about those pivotal moments that changed you. And then what is the greater meaning behind them? What is something that other people could relate to, even if they haven't been in those hiking boots, in those shoes at the time? It doesn't have to be a how-to. It doesn't have to be a highlight reel. Just a moment that subtly shaped the way that you look at something. And again, this is where we need those diverse perspectives because I've realized that adventure is so relative. It's a mindset more than it is a place or a specific thing outside. When I went to Everest Base Camp, it was my 30th birthday. I had a group of friends with me. I'm taking in all of the Himalayan views, looking at these really, really tall snowy mountains. And my guide, Ananta, he was from Nepal. I was talking about how tall these mountains were, and he said something that I think about all the time now. He said, anything under 19,000 feet here, that's just a hill. To Ananta, all of these majestic mountains I was looking at were just hills, and that blew my mind because for me, Everest Base Camp was a big deal, and for him, it was just another Tuesday. Adventure is so relative. All of us have different lenses on how we see adventure, and somebody's Everest is another Tuesday for you. Your Everest is another Tuesday for somebody else. There are, 7+ billion people on this planet? Your story is going to mean a lot to a lot of people, and it's not going to be for other people. So I would love if you could just start playing around with mining for those moments in your adventurous past to figure out what were those emotional moments that changed how you look at something, how you look at adventure, how you look at your relationship with your body, how you look at your role in your community that you can advocate for through story. You can start experimenting with different formats. Maybe you write an Instagram post and tag the Cairn Project so that we can amplify it. Leave yourself a voice note. I do this a lot. As you can tell, I'm a verbal processor. So I like to pull up a transcription app and just talk to myself. You can start writing trip reports. Those snow observations that I was talking about earlier, so important. You can write notes to self in your journal. You can create a story dump. I have this as well in my Google Docs where I think, that is something people might relate to someday when I need to get the word out. Put it in my little list of story ideas. Your story doesn't need to be tidy or epic. It just needs to be true to you, for you, so that other people can see your worldview. And the Cairn Project can support you in this. Our Trailblazers are a group of volunteers who turn their adventure into a fundraiser that crowdfunds scholarships for the Summit Scholarship Foundation. We give fundraising support and story narrative support to these trailblazers. So if you have an adventure coming up this year and you want to share the story behind it to impact the greater good, then definitely check out the link in the show notes so you can learn more about the Trailblazer program. Also, we are going to be expanding storytelling education, fundraising education, and adventure education through our brand new, almost like a webinar series. They're free learning sessions called Trail Talks. We have one actually that just happened a couple days before this episode has aired, and it was about pitching brands to sponsor you for an adventure. So we'll have a mixture of different topics during these Trail Talks learning sessions, online, free, open to you, open to the public, any woman who is looking for support in storytelling, adventure planning, and fundraising. We got you. Again, check the show notes to see when the next Trail Talks are. And of course, this podcast, the See Her Outside podcast, is meant to inspire more women to share their stories. We are featuring stories from trailblazers, from Summit Scholarship recipients, from women who are sharing how nature transformed them because they know that their experience can help us close the gender gap inside and out. You don't have to be a pro storyteller. You just need to show up. And so those are our tools that can help you. Keep listening to this podcast. Come to a free trail talk. Volunteer to be a trailblazer. If you have a race this year, that is a great way to get into the trailblazer community. If you're doing a hike or a paddle, or maybe you're trying to get to a certain amount of elevation gain in a certain month, that all counts as an adventure, and we can work together to find the story driving that adventure so that we can all share this transformational, magical experience of being outdoors. You know what? I am currently sharing my own story. I have an adventure fundraiser going on right now. It is open for a few more days as I test out a sprint adventure model of fundraising, 7-day fundraiser. I am attempting a 100-mile gravel bike race. So you can follow the stories that I'm sharing through this adventure fundraiser in real time right now on Instagram, on our email list. Just click all the links below and you will find my story and ways that you can get involved as well. To recap this kind of off the cuff, heart to heart, we talked about why you need to be sharing your story, the mental traps that a lot of us fall into when it comes to sharing our story and how you can challenge them, and how to start uncovering your own unique story, plus some tools to get you started through the Cairn Project. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this chat, it is that your outdoor voice doesn't have to be the loudest. It just has to be true. You don't need this epic finish line gold medal photo. You don't need a sponsorship deal. You don't need the perfect Instagram reel. You just need to show up with your full, honest story and know that somebody somewhere out there needs to hear it, and it will impact them to live a happier, healthier life. I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad that you have listened to me try not to rant, but also maybe ranting is good in this case. So together, let's keep on telling our truth. Let's keep using our outdoor voice. And I will see you next time on See Her Outside. If you want to support the mission of the Alliance for Gender Equity in Outdoor Adventure, I'll give you several options. 1, you can apply to become a trailblazer through our program, the Cairn Project. Trailblazers design an adventure fundraiser that crowdfunds scholarships for the Summit Scholarship Foundation. Go to www.cairnproject.org to learn more. 2, you can spread the word about the Summit Scholarship Foundation to help us advance gender equity on and off the mountain. Check it out at www.summitscholarship.org. And 3, you can share the See Her Outside podcast with a friend. Every single share, 5-star review, or comment helps us share stories to get more girls and women outside. See Her Outside is hosted by me, Angie Marie, and edited by Allison Castonguay, with research by Danielle Peacher. Until next time, go get outside.